Hello and welcome to another episode of Between the Covers. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you're watching live, please do say hello, let us know your name, tell us where you're watching from, and if you're an author or an aspiring author. If you're watching on a replay, just put in the comments hashtag replay. So who am I and what have you tuned into? If you haven't watched this before, my name is Daniela Blechner. I am an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Dreams Publishing, and we transform diverse writers into successful published authors. On the bookshelf behind me here are just some of the 200 plus books that we have published over the last 6 years. I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen authors and powerful voices, people with powerful messages and stories to share with the world. What is Between the Covers and why is it called Between the Covers? Well, it's all about getting up close and personal and finding out what goes on between the covers of creating, publishing, distributing and marketing. Don't forget marketing, very important, marketing a book. It's also a platform to not just hear from authors and hear about their author journey, but I also interview experts within the industry to get you really understanding that whole process. So today I have a very special guest. I'm going to introduce her. Her pen name is Chloë Rayban. She's best known for her young authors, YA novels, young adult novels. Her wacky, humorous Justine novels have been shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal and twice for the Guardian Fiction Prize. One of them was made into a feature film by Columbia Tristar. So this is a serious heavyweight author I'm interviewing today. She has published a multitude of books. I've been researching her today and I saw around 20 plus books. She'll tell us the exact amount. Over the past 25 years, she's been in the industry for 25 years. Her books have been published by companies like Random House, Harper Collins, Hodder, Headline and Bloomsbury. So these are some of the big four traditional book publishing companies. She's made the switch to self-publishing. We'll also be speaking about her novel, Escape to a French Chateau. Very excited to be speaking about that today. And not only that, she is an editorial consultant at Jericho Writers. So those of you who know, I am writing a fantasy novel for middle grade young people. And I have been looking at going the agent route, and she helps people to put agent submission packs together. So if you're looking to go the traditional route, Chloë is the person to ask your questions to. So as you're coming into the broadcast, say hello and don't be afraid to throw up your questions. This is an interactive show, whether it is during the show or whether it's after. I'm sure the questions will be answered. Okay, so let's welcome Chloë. Hello, Chloë. How are you doing?
Hi there. Hello.
You made it. You're here.
I made it. Yeah, exactly.
So
from the middle of France. From the middle of nowhere.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. So we'll just obviously say that it says Peter Bear. Your real name is Carolyn Bear, but you publish under the pen name for your YA novels. Is that right?
Yeah. Chloë Rayban. Yeah.
Okay. So you've been in the industry now for 25 years.
At least, yes. I'm afraid.
Least. Tell us a little bit about how you got started.
When I left university, my degree was actually in philosophy, which really leads to absolutely nothing apart from teaching philosophy. And I had lunch with a girlfriend and she said, oh, there's a job going where I work. I said, well, where do you work? She said, in an advertising agency. And I said, well, what do they do? And she said, well, come and see. So after lunch, went in, had an interview, and I got a job in an advertising agency without any idea what they did. And very quickly thought, well, the most interesting job in this place is going to be writing copy. So my first job was as an advertising copywriter, and I did that for about 5 years. Got a little bit bored with it all, started going in early in the morning to write a book, and eventually I sent it to an agent who turned it down. From there, things happened.
And it's anyone who has tried to get an agent, or anyone who has tried
Yes.
to get a deal with a publisher, a traditional publishing company, it's not an easy road, is it?
No, it's not an easy road at all. This agent I sent my first book to sent me a really long letter. We actually used letters in those days, you know.
I remember those days.
Yeah, you remember, saying why she was turning it down. And I was, I was sort of pretty depressed. And I went back to work basically. And about 4 years later, I wrote another book. And I thought, who shall I send it to? And I remembered how good her letter was when she turned my book down. And I looked at, we had telephone books then, looked in the telephone
I
book,
remember telephone
found her
books.
name, rang her up, and I said, "Do you remember me?" And she said, "Yes, I do remember that book, yes." And I said, "Well, can I send you another one?" And I did. And she rang me back in about 3 days and said, "Love it. I think I can get this published." And so I had an agent. It was published by, they were called Methuen in those days, and eventually all these have conglomerated now. I think they're
Yeah.
they're gone into a random century, I think. And so very in those days I was very lucky to get my toe in the door and have an agent, and she was absolutely brilliant for about 25 years. She supported me, she took my books, she got brilliant deals with foreign publishers, and then she retired, um, which meant that I was taken over by another agent, David Hyam, who are very, very big.
Right. Yeah. Know them.
And I have sort of lost a little bit of that day-to-day chatting and support that I found originally from Laura, who was my agent. And life has got so much harder for writers now. It's a completely different world.
I was going to ask you that question actually, because it just sounds so much more personal. The fact that, first of all, you got a response, you got
Yeah,
written response, and you got feedback.
yes,
Now you hear, but it's impossible to give anyone feedback. If you don't hear from us, it's just a no. Leave us alone. Don't chase us up, you know. And it
exactly.
just sounds so lovely that you had dialogue and you were able to look her up in the phone book and have that personal touch where you could send her your second manuscript and she told you she loved it. So let's talk about how then, in your eyes, and what you've seen, how has the industry changed for writers?
Um, if you really go back in time and you look at when, for instance, Lord of the Rings was
Yeah.
published, Tolkien was in university with all his friends. It was a very small group of people. They all knew each other. And there was C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, um, Anthony Powell, Virginia Woolf, Evelyn Waugh. They all knew each other, and they said, "Oh, I really like your books. Send it to my agent or my publisher." And this tiny world, it was a very good world of writing, but it was a tiny world. And they were writing books which were quite expensive to buy in hardback,
Right.
equivalent today of about 60 or 70 quid for a hardback, probably. And publishers were small, and they were quite contented to publish maybe 7,000 as first edition.
Wow. There's
And
quite a
my
lot.
books originally, there was 7,000 as a first edition. And then if that sold out, they would do another 7,000 or another 12,000. And they were writing books for a very small market. And it worked. They made enough money to run a publishing company. Then things started to change
Right.
for the better, with, for instance, Penguin books coming out. So it was possible to buy a book for the equivalent of what would now be probably about 8 quid or £10. And the democratization of publishing started. Books, anybody could buy books. They were available to everyone, which was absolutely brilliant. The next thing that happened was books were always supported by, they all had to be sold at the same price. It was
Oh,
called the net book agreement.
okay.
Supermarkets couldn't buy in a load of books and sell them at half price. Nobody, all books were sold through bookshops at the same price. And then the net book agreement ended, which meant people, supermarkets, and could discount. And then in came Amazon, which meant that not only were your books not selling at the equivalent of £70 for a hardback, not only could publishers not afford to come up with a small edition of 7,000, publishers who were making the equivalent, and agents as well, on 15%, were making maybe 10p a book. So in order to make enough money to run your coffee machine and pay your juniors, you're going to have to sell probably 7,000, 50,000, 100,000. And everything has moved now to books that sell in quantity. And nobody really can afford to sell books in small editions. So popular culture has taken over. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But
well, I have got a question here actually about that. I've just typed it up here. Is, have Amazon ruined the book publishing industry or the book selling industry?
Well, in a way, they've been wonderful for making books available to everyone at a price they can afford, or even books that you might not like, and you can look at them, read the first 30 pages. I like it, I don't like it. Or even buy it for 99p or 1.99. So on the one hand, it's been absolutely brilliant at bringing books to everyone. But on the other hand, it's made life very difficult for agents and publishers because they're just not making enough money. And that has forced them into looking for mainly genre books that sell in millions. And so this is one of the reasons why it's terribly difficult now to get an agent. They simply can't take you on unless they know you're going to be a bestseller. And the agents have a terrible job at 15% of 99p or 3.99 to sell it to publishers, because publishers cannot take it on unless they know it's going to be a bestseller. So I'm very sympathetic with what has happened to both agents and publishers. They've been forced into having to really, really maintain their sights on bestsellers. And if you're not a bestseller, you're nobody.
This is a great conversation, and it's a really great answer. Thank you. I think a lot of writers and authors, they don't really understand. I mean, even there, I've just learned how it's affecting the whole publishing industry. And I think from a writer's perspective, we can often beat ourselves up and think, well, our writing's not good enough, or I'm never going to be able to make it.
No,
how come
it's not to do with that. It's to do with your writing might be brilliant, but your market's very small, so nobody can afford to support you. And obviously it has having an impact on quality, because genre books that, we've had Mills and Boon, we've had, romance, we've had genre books are selling very well. But it means it's extremely, really different if you don't fit into a genre to make your way now.
What would you say, because you're well known for your, young, I keep wanting to say young author, young adult novels.
Adult, yeah.
I mean, how many young adult novels have you published?
Probably about 18.
18. I mean, that's a huge amount.
It's not compared with some people, Some authors, really famous authors, really, they get into the 50 books or something. Wow. People work terribly hard.
Some of us struggling to get one.
Well, that's not to do with the quality of your book. It's to do with the forces in the market.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to the next question, I guess. So, young author, young adult novel, you're best known for your Justine novels. Would you say that's a particular difficult market to crack now, or would you say there's other markets? What are the most difficult markets to crack as an author?
Probably the most difficult is the real high quality literary fiction. In young adult now, fantasy is the thing. Fantasy novels are selling well, and if you get into a sort of groove where people like your fantasy novels, probably with a bit of romance in them, and you can churn out one after the other. Although young adult doesn't sell as well as ebooks.
Right.
We're still more young adult, maybe changing now, but young adult is very much into paperbacks. But the long fantasy books are probably what are selling best as young adult.
Okay, brilliant. And so when you were writing for young adult, how did you find it writing for that particular market? I've got two questions at the same time. What is it you love about writing, and what was it that attracted you to that particular market?
Well, I've always found that when you write a book, you really have to care about something. You really have to have something probably that bugs you. And what bugged me was having a teenager who was 14, lying in bed with a phone as a landline to the outside world, and she'd be in bed till about 11:30 when I was already sort of shouting up the stairs, and then she'd come down like a sort of glittering butterfly, all made up and beautiful, and waft out into her friends. And I thought, God, here I am. I'm slagging away in the kitchen. I'm
Yeah.
doing everything. I'm getting her dry cleaning. I'm doing her washing. And I'm just a bloody mum, aren't I? And actually, I thought, well, let's look at it from her point of view. Um, and I thought, well, what's her life like? And this is my elder daughter.
Yeah.
I also had a younger daughter, 4 years younger, which is a bit like me and my sister. My sister was always the glamorous one, sort of coming downstairs in 3-inch heels and wafting on. And I was the one in the pink dressing gown who was told, "Oh, open the door, can you? Adam's outside." And I had a big crush on my elder sister's boyfriend, who was absolutely gorgeous. He's called Adam, and he was a medical student. And she said, "Oh, go down, let him in. He won't care what you look like." And I thought about this when I watched my elder daughter and my younger daughter, because exactly the same was going on. So I thought I'd write a book about this. The younger daughter seeing the elder daughter going out into the world and
Yeah.
being looked down on. So that was the first Justine book.
Amazing. And when you got into the perspective, was it your daughter? Obviously, it came from your experience and from watching your daughter and finding those connections.
Very much so. Very much
How
so.
easy was it then? So once you've written the first one, obviously there's going to be another one, another one, another one. How easy was it to continue that series?
It sort of goes back a little bit to my peculiar degree, studying philosophy. The first book was about a girl who wrote a letter to her future self, put it in a bottle, and buried it at the end of the garden.
Oh, I love
So
that.
her future self, 20 years later, dug it up, and inside the letter was, you've got to be bean thin, incredibly rich, sell all your clothes, you've got to have a drive-in wardrobe, you've got to be incredibly famous, don't let me down. And the first book, Justine, wrote this letter, and it was sitting in front of the television about a week later when it went all fuzzy, and this woman appeared and looked through and said, "Is that you, Justine?" And it was her future self who'd managed through technology to actually communicate with her. And she said, "Wow, she sort of read it. What have I done with my life? Am I famous? Am I rich?" And the older self said, "Well, not really. You really, really bombed out on your O levels, And she said, "Oh my God, I didn't, did I?" And the elder self said, "Look, we between us can put this straight. You've got to put your life straight, right?" And so the older Justine leads the younger Justine off the rails, and it's a comedy book. It's a joke. Second book, I thought, oh God, what's Justine going to do next? I don't know. And I thought about it, and I was thinking about feminism and how men were maligned for doing all these ghastly things men do and you up, and I suddenly think, well, what if you got switched from female to male, for instance? How would you feel? And so in my second Justine book, she goes into a virtual reality exhibition, and there's a little dial. You can turn the knobs, and she made herself look like a rather gorgeous boy, but got stuck like that. So she had to live 2 weeks of her life as a girl's mind in a boy's body to
Oh, wow.
actually discover what it was like being a boy in that kind of world. So that was so each of the books about Justine were a little philosophical idea, a little simple one, but looking at life from a different point of view.
And gets people really thinking about gender stereotypes and roles.
Yeah, quite exactly.
How, you know,
But did you actually know that boys feel just as self-conscious in beachwear as we do? Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. If you're watching this or on the replay, if you're a male, how do you feel about wearing beachwear? Do you feel self-conscious? Let us know. So, okay, they're your YA novels, which you've done incredibly well. How does it feel, first of all, to see all of those books published and out there in the hands of the readers?
Well, the nicest thing was communicating with teenagers, really. And because I was shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal, which was pretty surprising, I was sent to schools and libraries around Britain to actually give talks to schools,
Amazing.
to teenagers, and it was really, really lovely to actually meet teenagers with my books. And I used to get emails from them saying, "Hi, Chloe, how old are you?" Thinking I was probably about 13, which a bit of a surprise when I turned up. But so the actual day-to-day contact with teenagers was one of the most rewarding things. Um, and knowing the books have been read, that's really what matters.
And that's amazing. Like, going back to the beginning of when we first spoke, you said I'm just a mum, although that is one of the most amazing, most hardest jobs probably in the world.
No, of course.
Would you ever have thought from that moment of, watching your daughter wafting down the stairs that you would, in however many years that took, would be where you were at that point?
Not really. It all sort of rather took me by surprise, I think. You have to say, Laura, my agent, was absolutely brilliant. And the lovely thing about having an agent, you don't have to tell everyone how wonderful you are, because you've got somebody else to do it. And it's extremely difficult to say, God, I've written this really good book, but other people can do it for you. And in those days, you used to get reviews, and in the Guardian, Times, the book magazines, everything, literary supplements, you would get reviews for teenage books, and so people read them as people bought them. And those reviews have almost disappeared now. They really don't exist anymore. It's all going into Facebook, Twitter, online, Instagram, which is completely different, really, because a newspaper's got a readership, a magazine's got a readership, but you don't know where you're going on digital media, really.
That's it. It's a lot on Goodreads and Amazon and
Yes.
all of those places now. I was going to ask you, actually, I think my camera's gone a little bit fuzzy, I'm not sure why. There you go. Obviously, you have made the switch from traditional publishing, so that's been your experience. And now you're self-publishing. You said something interesting now, which is when you have an agent, they can shout about how great you are.
Yeah, quite.
When you're self-published, I mean, I know this from having published books and having worked with self-published authors, that you have to, if you're not singing about your book, there isn't anyone else who's going to do that.
No.
It's the marketing, it's the promotion, and now everything's very much digitalized. A lot of people are struggling, especially people who haven't got to grips with that technology, especially with social media. How have you found that now as a self-published author?
Well, it takes a lot of time. That's the annoying thing. I mean, as a writer, what you really enjoy doing is writing, not marketing your books. I thought when I also the difference between being published and self-published is the amount of work you have to do yourself. And I hadn't really realized how much work my agent and my publishers did. So with the book I've just self-published, the first thing I did was get a decent cover design. with a very good designer I met through Jericho Writers, who was absolutely lovely and fun to work with. Then I thought, oh God, I'm sure the inside's all right, but no, you have to get the inside designed as well. So there was the first quotes I got were about £1,000 for the interior. I thought, God, I'm investing. One of the reasons I went on Jericho Writers to earn some money to actually invest in self-publishing. I found some lovely guys in Portugal who did it for half that price, around £500. They did the interior design both for print and for ebooks. So I'd already spent another €1,000 to get my book going, and I thought, okay, here we go. We go on Amazon, and Amazon sounds really, really reasonable. They said, okay, we will publicize your book, and if we don't get enough clicks, you don't pay. So the more clicks you get, the more sales you get, the more you pay. So I thought, okay, yeah, well, I go up to €10 a day. But currently I'm paying about €2 a day. And unless you are getting really, really popular, Amazon don't push you. When you look on Amazon, it said, if you like this, you'll like these. You imagine this lovely little lady with glasses on saying, oh, they like this kind of book. I'll show her that. No, not at all. It's, it's all done
it's all
digitally.
AI, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Algorithms. So unless you're popular, you can't be popular. Unless you've got enough people buying your books, Amazon won't push you. So then you fall back on yourself, which is going through every avenue you have, like your lovely blog, for instance. And I've been on quite a lot of different blogs, doing a bit of self-publicity, but there are people who are really committed to advertising on Amazon. Do a series of books. The first one they give away for nothing. The second one is 99p. The third one's $1.99. The fourth one's $3.99. And then you've got a hooked audience, and you're selling in thousands, and Amazon is pushing you. But it's hard work.
It is. It
really
is. It's that real dedicated commitment to it. And I know that, I mean, I started off doing this whole bestseller thing of, people, if you're watching me, you'll see it. Thanks, Kwame. Kwame's an author too. It's that thing of, having your Kindle version, using KDP. I use Ingram Spark for both paperback and ebook, and then I put it on KDP. But I use KDP so that I can monitor sales of the Kindle. And so there's this trick of, promoting your books, telling everyone in your blog, going around publicizing for up to a month that my book is coming out and it's going to be 99p or whatever on publish date. And you drive everyone to your book at that same time, at that hour. And this, what it does, it boosts the algorithm so that your book, Amazon sees your book selling exactly as you said, and they're
becoming a bestseller.
And then obviously by having that visibility, you're going to keep getting more. And then people say, I'm an international bestseller, which is great. But sometimes, it can be as easy as being an international bestseller in the category of, the niche of your category is like fishing in London. I don't know. I'll just make that up.
Animated tomatoes.
Exactly. You're not going to have much competition in there, are you? So it's about, I guess, getting that balance and integrity.
Also, Amazon are getting quite clever in that even if you get one day when you've kind of said, everybody go for the book, so you have a big spike, Amazon don't like that either. One big spike followed by a dip. They don't like that either. So you've got to have some consistent waves. It's not just one blip. It's very clever, and I don't know. It's in a way it's a little bit frightening because now books are selling because they sell, not selling because they're good. Because the wonderful thing about publishers and agents was they chose books because they were good, and they promoted them. And this whole world about bestsellers it doesn't necessarily mean they're good books. It means there's books that sell.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, the good and bad. It's democratic, it's going to everyone, but on the other hand, be careful, because you don't have these guardians of quality anymore.
Yeah. That's why reviews are so important, and credible
Yes.
reviews as well.
Yes.
It's
Yes, and even the reviews you get on Amazon, they are sincere. I mean, most of them, they're very clever at weeding out the ones that friends have made. And, but at least the ones you get on Amazon tend to be sincere reviews, and they're very important to build up as well.
Amazing, thank you. So let's talk about your self-published book. Can you get all of your books at your website, chloerayban.com? Is that right? Is everything under that umbrella?
I don't really know that they're obviously you've got the name and the author, and you've only got to stick that into Amazon and you'll get the book.
Yeah.
I've recently discovered that I thought I was going Amazon worldwide, but actually I'm on Amazon UK, Amazon Australia, Amazon America, but friends in Switzerland, quite a lot of countries aren't actually covered by Amazon worldwide. So
Right.
one has to look at that. And so I warn people, you'll always find me on Amazon UK, but you might not find Amazon in Switzerland is run through Germany. India is non-existent, for instance. There's a big market for people reading books in English in India, but Amazon is just not into it. So you have to be quite careful with Amazon, that you look very carefully at how people are going to find your book.
Okay, so I've just gone to your website and I can see that some of your books are available. I'm going to put the Amazon link to your My Escape to the Chateau, because that's not showing on your website. Tell us a little bit about that, My Escape to the Chateau.
Well, after a life in London with a couple of teenage daughters, we got to the stage when we had two teenage daughters living at home and working from home, and two elderly parents who wanted to move in, one of whom did. My husband gave up his job and was working from home. And literally, we had 4 stories of people banging on computers. And I said, this is getting to be impossible. And we have got 2 aged people heading into their 90s we've got to look after. We can't, it's a 4-story house. They couldn't go upstairs. We have to find somewhere else to live. Our elder daughter moved to Paris. And so I said, look, it's so much cheaper to get a big house in France. Let's all go to France. So my husband and I went on weekend forays into France, and father-in-law was already living with us. We had to get a housekeeper in to look after the rest of them, feed them. And we had these wonderful weekends when we searched France for a big, cheap house. And one day we saw the house that is in My Escape to the Chateau, which I looked through the fence and I saw this place, and it was love at first sight. I said, that house is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was in the middle of nowhere, and it had one wing which had already guest rooms with bathrooms on the ground floor. I said, wonderful. My mother, your father, we can stick them in there. We can put a nurse above, and there's room for all of us to move into this house. So we immediately that night put an offer in and got the house that we are now living in very cheaply, which needed a lot of renovation. But we're in central France. We have 9 bedrooms.
Wow.
We now, since we've moved here, realize some of the things we wanted to do apart from writing, which was to invite groups of painters here. We've got a big studio, and singers here. We put on an opera every year. We have singers.
Wow.
The house is full of singers. And the next thing I want to do, I want to fill it with writers. So we have 9 rooms, all with a good internet connection. So I'd like to do week-long writing courses where I tutor a bit like on Jericho, and invite writers to come stay here, help develop their work,
absolutely,
which would be lovely.
Amazing, because sometimes you just need to get away and escape to a chateau to actually get that book written. So I think that's a fabulous idea.
Yes, no, it was lovely. I mean, I think I was 55 when we moved here, and at the stage when you suddenly think, what am I going to do next with my life? The children have grown up. It a completely new life, which has been great fun ever since.
That's amazing. And the book, does it encapsulate some of that journey, or it's a novel, isn't it?
Well, the book is a bit different because when we came to live here, my husband was actually going around the world doing seminars for a big multinational company, and he said, "Okay, look, somebody's got to stay there, and they've got to organise the builders." And I looked around, and it was me. So I was in this empty chateau that was built in 1758. All the floors were intact, the windows were intact, but it was empty. And I just had the sense that while I was here, I could feel the history of the people who'd lived in this house was all around me. And during the renovation, I found various objects lost or hidden or buried in the house. And I thought, well, each of this leads me to a person from the past. So I started researching the lives of the people who had lived in the house. We're quite lucky because it was one family, a small group of petty noblemen from the 18th century who'd lived in this house, and they were quite well documented. So I researched their lives, and so my novel takes a woman in the present who's researching the history of the house and finding objects. And every time she finds an object, you get an episode from the life of the person who'd lived in the house, all of which is based on fact.
Fantastic. I've got a copy of that. That's on my reading list. So I'm really
Thank you. Everyone counts. Every little helps.
It does. I put the link to My Escape to the Chateau in the post as well. So please get a copy of that book. It's a great idea, and it's based on a real life chateau. So I want to talk to you about your work with Jericho Writers. So those who don't know, Jericho Writers provides services for authors like myself. I've used them. They're a fantastic. So Kwame says, awesome. You'll need to put that on my reading list too. Yay. Kwame's an author too. He's a Commonwealth Prize short story prize winner. Have I got that right, Kwame?
Excellent. Wow.
So really, really well. So yeah. Jericho Writers provide resources and assistance for writers. You can have agent one-to-ones. You can also have editing services. You can also have editorial. You can have your manuscript, an assessment on your manuscript. And there's also a service called the Agent Submission Pack. And I know that that's something you do because I've worked with Chloe. Can you tell us, first of all, what is an Agent Submission Pack and what you do at Jericho Writers?
Just to go back to why I did it.
Yes.
During COVID, one felt a bit isolated, and I thought I had been to a couple of Jericho Writers festivals, which was the most lovely experience. The first one, a whole university was like going back to university. I was sleeping in a little room with and having all my meals cooked, and really good seminars to go to, and lovely meetings, round tables, loads of authors who are struggling to get published or struggling with their manuscript. It was a really lovely experience. And I thought during COVID, I needed to make a little bit of money, probably to help with the self-publishing. And I thought, oh, I don't know, there are an awful lot of people writing. So I sent them an email. I said, do you need anybody to help with editing teenage novels at young A, at YA? And they wrote back and said, yes, we do actually. We're a bit inundated with COVID. Lots of people are writing. Show us some of your work. luckily, I'd done some critiques on a book my daughter was writing and another young friend was writing. So I sent them a couple of critiques I'd done on people's writing. And then they had to do a test to make sure that my editing was up to scratch, and I passed. And they said, okay, you can become a YA editor. And to start with, it was a sort of way of making a bit of money. But as I got into it, I got so much more out of it. I enjoyed it so much more than I expected. To
Oh,
actually be working with people who are struggling the way I struggle and seeing their struggles from a little bit of a distance and feeling, I've done that, I know that, I can help with that. Um, and it was an amazingly rewarding experience. So I actually love doing it. The
amazing.
money isn't huge, but it's nice to have. But
It helps,
um,
especially when
I
you're self-published.
thoroughly, I, th- I thoroughly recommend a Jericho editing service, because often you get so close. Most of the writers I've been working with said I've been so close to it. I've revised and revised. I just can't see where I'm going. I can't see the wood for the trees. And to take I'm so much further away from it, and to read, I always read the whole manuscript through before I do
Mm,
anything else. And then I sit down and think, where are the sags? Where are the problems? Why is the plot not working? And to actually analyze what's happening for other people has taught me so much about what I'm doing wrong.
mm.
It's very, very rewarding.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Janine says, hello. Hello. Janine's another author as well. So if you're an author and if you're watching, please do check out jerichowriters.com. They are
Yes.
absolutely amazing. I've learned so much. I'm a member.
I thought that they were going to be a bit of a con to start with, but absolutely not. There's
Oh,
some
really?
very, very nice people there. Well,
I
there are some companies like that.
Oh, they really are. They are.
Yeah.
I've looked at so many different companies in terms of looking at people who can. When you're releasing your baby into the world, you really need
Mm.
somebody who is an expert. I thoroughly researched every single person, every single company. Who are the best people to help me to shape up my manuscript so that it's manuscript submission ready for agents. So it's jerichowriters.com, and we're going to speak about applying for agents in a second. Okay. Clark Kwame says Commonwealth Short Story Prize 2023 winner for the Caribbean and globally. I must try a hand at YA writing.
Yeah.
Carolyn's passion filters through.
Right.
So tell us, what is an agent submission pack, and what needs to be in it to send to agents, first of all?
First of all, a covering letter saying what the book's title is, who it's aimed at, um, what part of the market it's going to go into, young adult or romance or whatever, and a very brief bit about yourself, what you've done before, if you had something published before, or if this is the first thing, or if you've got another job that's related, which might be giving you information. For instance, if you work in childcare or something, or teaching, something about yourself. So that's the covering letter, short, to the point. Then you need a one or a little bit more than a one-page synopsis. And this should be
Oh,
pretty
this was the
factual.
hardest bit. Yeah.
Yes. Pretty factual about my book is about a girl of this age who's an orphan who lives in Central America, and during which period, and this is what happens. So it's a very factual synopsis. And then they say it depends on the company or the agent, your first 5,000 words, or it might be your first chapter, which have a jolly good look at it and make sure you haven't got any typos. And usually they will tell you they want it, which size and which style, etc. Get all those nitty gritties right, or they get a bit irritable. It can help in your covering letter to an agent to actually know which market they're in. I noticed you represent X. I very much enjoy their books. My books have something in common with. And another thing that's important to include is my book is a cross between ballet shoes and Lord of the Rings or something,
I've got a question.
or give them an idea of
Mm.
what kind of book it is.
Yeah, I've got a question about that when you're doing sort of like comp titles. So when I first had a go at that, I think I was like, mine is a cross between Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia, right?
Yes,
But then
yeah,
they
but they
sometimes
try
they
and get
say,
them not too far apart. I always
well,
do,
yeah,
but
exactly. But I went to a seminar once. They said choose something that's recent and choose something that's not kind of obvious.
yes,
You know what I mean? Harry Potter kind of feels way out there, old
yeah.
classics like the Chronicles of Narnia. When you're doing comp titles, and what advice would you give in terms of sort of comparison titles you should use?
Well, just be totally honest. Usually we're all inspired by something, and you know, if you really loved a book and you're writing something in the same style, just say what it is. I find that quite difficult actually, because there aren't many books that are particularly like my peculiar books. So but it's an important, you know, the person you are speaking to knows absolutely nothing about you.
Mm.
And it's very important to realize if you walk into a bookshop, which shelf are you going to be on?
Yeah.
Are you going to be in the fantasy books? Are you going to be in science books? Just you're a completely unknown quantity to your agent. They haven't got much time. The quicker and the clearer you can get that information over to them, the better.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. One of the things I'm going to recap what you said there. So Chloe said the first thing is a covering letter or query letter stating a bit about you, what market you're writing for. Sorry, a bit about your book, what market you're writing for, and a bit about you. We don't need a whole CV about you, just what's interesting, some facts. I've written something random in there that I hope will help people remember that I've climbed Kilimanjaro and I speak a bit of broken Swahili.
Yes, I like that. I remember that. And something wacky is very nice. Yeah.
Something different. And then, this is what I found the most difficult is the one-page synopsis, because especially when you're writing fiction, you know there's so many twists and turns, and you've got to really be clear about what are your hooks, what are your most pivotal moments, because you've got to get that across in one page, right? And it's like you said, it's just factual. There's no will he manage to
it's also one is always asked the key thing: what is your book about? Daniela, your book, I think, is coming to terms and overcoming grief.
Yeah.
And so knowing what your book is fundamentally about is really important.
Yeah. Thank you. We're taking notes if we're watching now or on the replay. And then the last thing you said was they'll ask for the first 5,000 words, typo, first 1,000 words without typos, or maybe first 3 chapters. I often find it's, the first 3 chapters and first 5,000, as you said. And it's just making that first impression, because you don't get to make another one.
The first page is very important. I've been a little bit naughty in the past in that my first 5,000 words, I've sometimes taken a couple of paragraphs out because you actually want to get to a point in it, don't you? You don't get very far in 5,000 words. Or you might even want to rewrite your first chapter in order to send it to agents. Because if they like it and they say, "Oh, we want more," you can always say, "I did cheat." Here's the first 6 chapters. I also it's quite important to be a bit of a way down your book, because my agent said to me at one point when I was writing my first book for adults, "Oh, for God's sake, you've got to impress. You don't have to write the whole book, see if they're going to take it on." And I did my first chapter and I did my synopsis and I sent it to someone and she said, "Oh, I really like this. Can you send me the rest?" Whoops. I hadn't actually written the rest.
So you're seriously writing after that?
Head down for a month. I kept on saying, "Well, I'll be back to you. I'm terribly busy at the moment." So you do need to be a certain way down your book before you get people too involved.
I'm a bit fuzzy at the moment. That's brilliant. And it's interesting because Harry Bingham, who was like the founder of, who's the main person behind Jericho Writing, he does this is an exercise there's like a forum called Townhouse, and you have to write, and there's a competition as well actually, the first 5,000 words, and he will pick some. He picked mine. I was so happy. Give me some good feedback. So enter the first 5,000 words without cheating, not 5,001, 5,000 words of your novel. And as I was looking at it, I realized, even though I'm so happy with it, I want to get to like a certain pivotal part.
You had to get to a point.
Yeah,
I remember.
so it made me realize, like, it helped me to refine and take out some of the, things that I didn't necessarily need in there, the extra description, but I would like it in the actual novel. But it really got me thinking about really getting to the point. So yeah, I think what you said there is really key. I'm going to ask you one more question about what would your top 3 tips be to authors who have been trying to get an agent? I feel like I'm talking about me, but I know there's lots of people here who are watching and thinking about getting an agent, going the traditional publishing route. I love self-publishing. It gives you a sense of, empowerment. You can do it at your own pace, or you're completely in control of your vision. I do enjoy marketing and promoting to an extent. Obviously, I'd love to have Random House or Penguin or Harper Collins behind me, the big machines getting the books into the physical bookstores and doing the promotion. Wouldn't we all? So I think both routes are powerful in their own way. So what advice would you give to agents to authors who to trying to get an agent and sort of losing hope?
Don't lose hope, obviously. Get advice from people. It's very difficult to see what you are not doing wrong, but could do better. So get advice from other people reading your work. It could be friends, it could be other authors, it could be someone like Jericho, and get a sort of a really good voice looking at what you're doing objectively, and be willing to rewrite. Don't cling on to something. Oh, this is a really important bit of what I'm doing. Be open to advice and take advice. And don't get discouraged because you're being turned down, because 99% of books sent to agents and publishers are turned down. It's not because your book's no good, it's because they don't know how to sell it. So the self-publishing route is the other route. And if you're going to do it that way, get digitally savvy. And you're a wonderful example, Danielle, of somebody who's out there, willing to be out there, pushing for things, promoting things with an enormous amount of confidence, and be like Daniela, that you're really ready to put yourself out there, make a don't be shy. Who cares? Not being seen is the worst thing. Being seen, making a bit of an idiot of yourself, doesn't matter. No, get out and be like Daniela. That's what you've got to be if you're going to self-promote.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate speaking with you and your advice and your tips. I could speak to you forever. Thank you. I did have one more thing, and it was yes. Go on.
No, tell me.
Okay. How can people get in touch with you and find out more about your books? Is it that same website?
Oh, yes, my website. You can put a question or an email on my website. Yes, and in fact, we have another couple of books coming, so I've got to update because another book coming out shortly. So Yeah.
Watch this space. There's another book coming out by Chloë Rayban. It's been amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's stay connected. Oh, yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to say. Chloë looked at my agent's submission pack and she was absolutely fantastic. That advice you gave me completely just gave me a huge turnaround, and I took on board a lot of what you said. And at the time, you don't want to cut certain things because they're so important. I've got to get this scene in, and you've got to be strict with yourself. And so I just want to thank you for that and for all of your help.
Good. Well, you took it the right way, but the thing is to be constructive, not destructive. You're helping people to get published, not telling them what they shouldn't do.
Yeah, and you've been brilliant. So thank you. Thank you everybody for joining. Please join us next week where I'm going to be interviewing two people, Vina Andal and Vanessa LaRose, who are going to, Vanessa LaRose is from Book and Culture and Vina is from Curly Treats, and they're going to be talking about an event that they are running called Curly Treats on the 7th of October. I'll be speaking there along with some of my authors as well about publishing and writing and being a self-published author. Please do join us 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST next Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.